The emergency beacon lit up every communication system across the galaxy at the same moment. From the crystalline towers of Talvek Prime to the underwater cities of Sorfin, the message was clear and urgent. The Galactic Council demanded immediate attendance from all member worlds. No exceptions, no delays. Ambassador Hyun Park received the summons while reviewing trade agreements in his modest office on the orbital station above Earth. He was a quiet man in his 50s, with graying hair and eyes that had seen humanity rise from a divided world to a unified planet. 15 years ago, when Earth joined the Council, many thought it was a mistake. Humanity was too young, too violent, too unpredictable. Hyun had spent every day since then proving them wrong, or at least trying to. The message contained no details, only a timestamp and coordinates. Hyun knew what that meant. Something terrible had happened. He called Commander Ji-won Kim immediately. She answered from the bridge of her patrol ship, the Sentinel, currently running exercises near Jupiter's moons. Ji-won was younger than most fleet commanders, barely 40, but she had earned her rank through skill and cold competence. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun and her uniform was always perfect. She never smiled much, but her crew respected her more than any officer in the fleet. "Ambassador," she said, her voice calm and professional. "I saw the beacon." "Any intel from your channels?" Hyun asked. "Nothing official. But rumors are spreading fast. Something hit the Outer Rim colonies. Hit them hard." Hyun felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The Outer Rim was Council territory, protected by some of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. If something could threaten them, Earth needed to know about it. "I want you at the Council station," Hyun said. "Bring the Sentinel. We might need a military presence." "Understood. We'll be there in 6 hours." The Council chambers were enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes and environmental needs. The Talvek representatives floated in crystalline containers filled with noble gases. The Sorfine delegation occupied a massive water tank that rose 3 stories high. Dozens of other species filled the circular arena, each in their designated sections. The human section was small, tucked between 2 larger delegations. Hyun sat in the center, with Commander Ji-won standing behind him in full-dress uniform. Dr. Mina Choi, the xenobiologist assigned as cultural liaison, sat to his left, her tablet already recording everything. Mina was brilliant, perhaps too brilliant for her own good. She had degrees in biology, linguistics, and xenopsychology, and she could speak 12 galactic languages fluently. She was 32, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a habit of analyzing everyone she met. Some found her intensity uncomfortable. Hyun found it useful. The high speaker of the Talvek opened the session. Their voice resonated through translation devices, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "We face an unprecedented crisis. 3 member worlds have fallen to an extragalactic force. The Vrex Collective has entered our galaxy and begun systematic conquest. They do not negotiate. They do not communicate. They consume and move forward." Holographic images appeared above the chamber floor. Planets burning, ships torn apart, cities reduced to ash. The Vrex vessels looked organic, like massive insects made of dark metal and pulsing energy. They moved in perfect swarms, thousands of ships acting as one mind. "Our combined defense fleet engaged them at the Corvin system," the high speaker continued. "We lost 60% of our forces. The Vrex lost nothing. They adapt to our weapons in real time. What destroys one ship fails against the next." Silence filled the chamber. Hyun had never heard such fear from the Council before. These were civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, species that had solved problems Earth couldn't even imagine. And they were afraid. The debate began immediately. The Talvek proposed a defensive line, abandoning the Outer Rim to fortify the inner territories. The Sorfine wanted to study the Vrex, find a weakness through research and analysis. A reptilian species called the Court suggested diplomatic outreach, despite the high speaker's clear statement that the Vrex didn't communicate. Hours passed, then days. The Council argued over protocols and procedures, about proper military doctrine and historical precedent. They formed committees to study the committees that were studying the problem. Meanwhile, the holographic reports showed more systems falling, more millions dying. Hyun listened to it all, his face carefully neutral. Beside him, Mina scribbled notes furiously, her expression growing darker. Behind him, Ji-won stood perfectly still, but he could feel her tension like a coiled spring. On the 4th day, the high speaker finally addressed Earth. "Ambassador Park, your world is the newest member of this council. You have limited military capability and little experience with galactic threats. However, we would hear your assessment as protocol requires. It was meant to be a formality, a polite dismissal. Hyun stood slowly. He looked around the chamber at all these ancient, advanced species. He thought about Earth's history, about the wars and the suffering, about how humanity had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times before finally learning to work together. He thought about what his grandfather had told him about the climate wars, about how desperation taught hard lessons. You're not losing because you lack firepower, Hyun said quietly. You're losing because you've forgotten how to fight a real war. The chamber erupted. Representatives from a dozen species shouted protests. How dare this human, from a primitive world that had barely achieved spaceflight a century ago, lecture the council on warfare? The high speaker's voice cut through the noise. Explain yourself, Ambassador. You're treating this like a problem to be solved with reason and study, Hyun continued. But the Vreks aren't reasonable. They're not here to talk or negotiate. They're here to take what they want, and they'll keep taking until someone stops them with force. Not careful, measured, civilized force. Real force. The kind that frightens your enemy into retreating. We are beyond such barbarism, the high speaker said, their tone cold. We have evolved past the need for savagery. Then you'll lose, Hyun said simply, because your enemy hasn't evolved past it. They understand violence perfectly. That's why they're winning. A Talvek military commander spoke up, their crystalline form glowing red with anger. Humanity has known unified peace for barely a century. You were killing each other with nuclear weapons within living memory. What could you possibly teach civilizations that have maintained peace for millennia? Hyun met their gaze steadily. We can teach you how to survive when peace isn't an option anymore. The council voted that same hour. Earth was forbidden from engaging the Vreks. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Humanity would remain on the sidelines while the adults handled the situation. Several representatives made speeches about not allowing primitive species to drag the galaxy back into an age of brutality. Hyun listened to it all without expression. When the session ended, he walked calmly back to the human section's private chambers. Jiwon and Mina followed him in silence. Once the doors sealed, Hyun pulled out his secure communication device. He typed a single message to Earth's command. They said no. Proceed with alternative. He hit send and looked at Jiwon. You know what needs to be done? Jiwon nodded. Yes, sir. How long do we have? The Vreks will reach the Midrim territories in 3 weeks. After that, they'll be too close to Earth to stop. Then we have 2 weeks to make them remember what war actually looks like, Jiwon said. Mina looked between them, realization dawning on her face. You planned this. Both of you. You knew they'd refuse Earth's help. The council thinks war is a philosophical debate, Hyun said quietly. They're about to learn it's not. The command center in Geneva looked nothing like the Grand Council chambers. It was underground, built into the heart of an old mountain with concrete walls and flickering holographic displays. This was where humanity had coordinated its defense during the Unification Wars, where desperate decisions had been made while the world burned. The room still carried that weight, that memory of hard choices. General Sora Lim stood at the main tactical table, studying fleet positions with the intensity of a chess master planning 20 moves ahead. She was 60 years old with short gray hair and scars on her hands from her days as a fighter pilot. She had flown missions during the final conflicts before Earth's nations finally united. She knew what war cost because she had paid the price personally. President Elena Volkov sat at the head of the conference table, reviewing the classified reports from Ambassador Hyun. She was a tall woman with sharp features and eyes that had seen too much compromise in galactic politics. Before becoming president, she had been Earth Security Minister during the first contact with alien species. She had never fully trusted the Council's promises of peaceful cooperation. They refused our help, Volkov said, not as a question but as confirmation. As predicted, General Lim replied. They see us as violent children playing with weapons we don't understand. Then they're fools, Volkov said flatly. Show me the plan. General Lim activated the holographic display. 20 points of light appeared, each representing an Earth Defense Force ship. They were smaller than Council vessels, built with human engineering that prioritized speed and adaptability over raw power. Each ship carried a crew trained in tactics the Council had never bothered to study, because they considered such methods beneath them. We'll mobilize these 20 ships under the cover of standard patrol reassignments, General Lim explained. Nobody will question routine fleet movements. Commander Ji-won Kim will lead the operation. She's our best tactical officer and she understands what we're asking her to do. Which is? Volkov asked, though she already knew. Fight the kind of war Earth knows how to fight. No rules of engagement designed by politicians. No honor codes that get people killed. Just results. Volkov was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the casualty projections, the risk assessments, the potential diplomatic fallout. Earth could be expelled from the Council. Trade agreements could collapse. Humanity might find itself alone in the galaxy again, facing threats with no allies. But if they did nothing, the Vrex would eventually reach Earth anyway. Better to fight now, on humanity's terms, than wait for the enemy to arrive at their doorstep. Do it, Volkov said. But make sure Ji-won understands. She's not just fighting the Vrex. She's showing the galaxy what Earth is capable of. That's a different kind of burden. She knows, General Lim said. I chose her because she can carry it. Commander Ji-won Kim stood in the briefing room of the Sentinel, looking at the faces of the 19 ship captains who would be under her command. Among them was Captain Dae-ho Yoon, a veteran of the Mars colony conflicts, a man who had fought pirates and corporate militias in the outer solar system. He was in his late 40s, built like a fighter, with eyes that had seen the worst humanity could do to itself. Also present was Lieutenant Bora Han, the best fighter pilot in the fleet. She was 28, small and quick, with reflexes that seemed almost inhuman. She had grown up in the orbital habitats where gravity was optional and three-dimensional thinking was natural. She could fly patterns that made simulation computers crash. Dr. Mina Choi stood to the side, not in uniform, but wearing the simple clothes of a civilian scientist. She had volunteered to join the mission, using her expertise in xenopsychology to help understand the Vrex. Ji-won had tried to refuse, but Mina had been insistent. You need someone who understands how they think, she had said. Otherwise, you're just guessing. Listen carefully, Ji-won began, her voice carrying across the room. What we're about to do is not sanctioned by the Council. Earth's government has authorized this operation, but officially we don't exist. If we succeed, they'll take credit. If we fail, they'll deny everything. She paused, letting that sink in. We're not going to fight like the Council fights. No formation battles, no warning shots, no honorable duels in space where both sides know the rules. We're going to fight like humans have always fought when survival was on the line. We're going to be smart, ruthless, and unpredictable. Captain Dae-ho spoke up. What are our rules of engagement? Win, Ji-won said simply. Study the enemy. Find their weaknesses. Exploit them without mercy. The Vrex aren't going to show compassion to the billions of people in their path. We're not going to show them any either. Lieutenant Bora raised her hand. What about the Council? They'll track us eventually. Let them, Ji-won said. By the time they figure out what we're doing, we'll have results. Results are hard to argue with. She activated the holographic display showing Vrex fleet movements. Dr. Choi has analyzed their behavior patterns. They're efficient, predictable in some ways. They move in swarm formations, relying on overwhelming numbers and adaptive technology. But they've never fought an enemy that refuses to play by their rules. Mina stepped forward. The Vrex are hive-minded, operating as a single intelligence distributed across thousands of units. They expect logical, predictable responses. They've conquered species that fight with honor and structure. They've never encountered a species that fights with creativity born from desperation. That's our advantage, Ji-won continued. We're going to do things they don't expect. We're going to make them react instead of act. We're going to make them afraid. Can a hive mind feel fear? One captain asked. We're going to find out, Ji-won replied. The fleet assembled in the shadow of Jupiter, far from Council sensors. 20 ships, each carrying a crew that had volunteered knowing they might never return. These weren't glory seekers or adventure hunters. These were people who understood that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become dangerous to those who threaten it. Ji-won stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, now designated as the flagship. Dae-ho commanded the Indomitable, the fleet's heaviest warship. Bora would lead the fighter squadrons from the carrier vessel Horizon. Mina worked from the intelligence suite, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Vrex. All ships report ready, the communications officer announced. Ji-won looked at the tactical display, at the course plotted toward the edge of Council space where the Vrex were advancing. She thought about the people back on Earth, unaware that their future might be decided in the next few weeks. She thought about the council representatives who had dismissed humanity as barbaric and primitive. She thought about General Lim's final words to her before departure. Show them what humanity learned from all those years of war. Show them what we're really capable of. Take us to dark space, G1 ordered. Engage stealth systems. From this moment forward, we're ghosts. The fleet vanished from sensors, slipping into the void between stars. They used stealth technology that Earth had developed in secret. Technology born from centuries of submarine warfare and espionage. The Council thought humans were primitive. They had no idea what humans had been hiding. As the Sentinel jumped to faster-than-light travel, Mina approached G1 on the bridge.
Do you think we can actually win?
G1 was quiet for a moment. We're not trying to win. We're trying to survive. That's different. When you're trying to win, you follow rules and measure success by standards. When you're trying to survive, you do whatever it takes. That's what scares them, Mina said. Not that we're violent. That we're willing to do whatever it takes. Good, G1 said. Fear is useful. It makes people think twice. The Council should have been afraid of the Vrex. Instead, they were arrogant. Now they're dying. And if we become monsters in the process? Mina asked quietly. G1 looked at her. Then we become monsters. But we'll be alive. And maybe that will give us time to become something better later. The fleet traveled for 3 days in silence, approaching the combat zone from an unexpected angle. They watched. They listened. They learned the patterns of Vrex movement, the rhythms of their swarm tactics. And then, when they understood their enemy, Commander Ji-won Kim gave the order that would change everything. All ships prepare for engagement. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Make them remember Earth. The Vrex convoy moved through space like a dark river. Thousands of ships in perfect formation. They had just finished consuming the resources of another conquered world and were heading toward their next target. Their movements were precise, calculated, efficient. They had done this 100 times before across dozens of systems. Nothing had ever stopped them. They didn't see the human fleet watching from the shadow of a dead moon. Commander Ji-won Kim studied the tactical display with cold focus. 3 days of observation had revealed patterns. The Vrex moved in predictable routes between star systems. They sent scout ships ahead, but those scouts followed rigid schedules. Their supply vessels traveled with minimal escort because nothing had ever been foolish enough to attack their logistics chain. The Council fought them head-on, Ji-won said to her bridge crew. Ship against ship, formation against formation. They tried to match Vrex strength with their own strength. That's why they lost. Captain Dae-ho-yoon's face appeared on the communication screen from the Indomitable. So we hit them where they're weak. We hit them where they don't expect anyone to hit them, Ji-won corrected. Their supply line. Mina, what happens if a hive mind loses resources? Dr. Mina Choi pulled up her analysis. The Vrex consciousness is distributed across their ships, but it still requires energy and materials. Cut off their supply and the entire swarm becomes less effective. They'll have to divert forces to protect logistics instead of advancing. Then that's where we start, Ji-won said. She opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, listen carefully. We're not engaging their main force. We're going to make them bleed in small cuts until they're forced to respond. Lieutenant Bora, your fighters will hit their supply depot at coordinates I'm sending now. Get in, destroy everything, get out. Maximum damage, minimal exposure. Bora's voice came through calm and confident. Understood. My people are ready. Corporal Sunho Kang, Ji-won continued, addressing the Marine commander. Your boarding teams will take one of their damaged scout ships. I want intelligence. Ship layout, technology, anything that helps us understand them better. Sunho was a compact man with the build of someone who had trained in close combat his entire life. He commanded the elite Marines, soldiers who specialized in zero-gravity warfare. We'll get you what you need, Commander. The first strike happened in silence. 12 human fighters launched from the horizon, flying dark with all systems on minimal power. They approached the Vrex supply depot from behind an asteroid field, using the natural cover to mask their approach. The depot was a massive structure, organic and metal fused together, pulsing with energy as it processed resources from conquered worlds. Bora led her squadron in a coordinated attack pattern that the Vrex had never encountered before. Instead of approaching in formation, each fighter came from a different angle. targeting specific weak points that Mina had identified in the structure. They used missiles with delayed detonation, setting them to explode in sequence to create maximum chaos. The depot erupted in a chain reaction of explosions. By the time the Vrex defense systems activated, the human fighters were already gone, vanishing back into the asteroid field. The entire attack lasted 4 minutes. The Vrex lost enough supplies to slow their advance by days. While the Vrex scrambled to understand what had happened, Corporal Sunho and his team were boarding one of their damaged scout ships on the other side of the system. They moved through the ship's corridors like shadows, using breaching equipment that could cut through Vrex hull material in seconds. The interior of the ship was strange, almost alive. Walls pulsed with bioluminescent light. The air was filled with a low humming sound that made their teeth ache. But the Marines had trained for hostile environments. They secured the engineering section and downloaded everything from the ship's systems before planting explosives and evacuating. When the Vrex command ship arrived to investigate, the scout ship exploded, destroying the command vessel's forward sensors. Another small cut. Another moment of confusion for an enemy that had never known confusion before. "They're responding," Mina reported from the intelligence suite. "Pulling ships back from the front line to protect their logistics network." "Good," Jiwon said. "Now they're thinking about defense instead of offense. Keep the pressure on." For 2 weeks, the human fleet conducted a campaign of terror that the galaxy had never seen. They didn't fight fair battles. They set traps in nebula clouds, using the dense gas to hide mines that tore through Vrex patrol ships. They hacked into Vrex communication systems and broadcast false coordinates, sending entire formations into dead zones. They even used psychological warfare, transmitting images of destroyed Vrex ships across all frequencies, forcing the hive mind to process its own losses over and over. Lieutenant Bora became a nightmare for Vrex pilots. She developed tactics that exploited the predictable nature of hive coordination. When Vrex fighters moved in perfect unison, she'd target the lead ship, knowing the others would follow it into her ambush. Her squadron painted small Earth flags on their fighters for every Vrex kill. By the end of the second week, some fighters were running out of space. Captain Deho led the heavier warships in hit-and-run attacks that defied conventional tactics. The Indomitable would appear from faster-than-light travel, unleash a devastating barrage on a target, and disappear before the Vrex could respond effectively. He used asteroid fields as cover, planetary gravity wells to slingshot into unexpected angles, even the radiation from dying stars to mask his ship's energy signature. But the campaign took its toll. The destroyer Sol was caught in a Vrex trap and barely escaped, limping back to the fleet with half its crew dead. The fighter carrier Horizon lost an entire squadron when a routine patrol was ambushed by Vrex hunters who had learned to predict human patterns. Commander Jiwon attended the memorial services via hologram, watching as the names of the dead were read aloud. She felt each loss like a physical weight. These weren't numbers on a tactical display. They were people who had trusted her judgment, who had followed her orders into situations where the odds of survival were never good. She started having trouble sleeping, lying awake in her quarters thinking about every decision, every order that had led to someone not coming back. Captain Deho found her one night in the observation deck staring at the stars. "We're winning," he said quietly, standing beside her. "At what cost?" Jiwon asked. "The only cost that matters in war. Blood. Sacrifice. The question isn't whether the cost is too high. The question is whether not paying it would cost more. That's easy to say when you're not the one giving the orders." "I've given plenty of orders that got people killed," Deho said, his voice hard. "During the Mars conflicts, I sent squads into situations where I knew some wouldn't come back. You know what I learned? The dead don't blame you for making the hard call. They blame you for hesitating when decisiveness could have saved them." Jiwon was quiet for a long time. "The council is tracking us now. Ambassador Hyun sent word. They know what we're doing. They're calling it barbaric, uncivilized. They're calling it effective," Deho corrected. "They just don't want to admit that their way failed." The breaking point came when the Vrex sent a war fleet specifically to hunt down the human ships. 30 capital vessels, hundreds of support craft, all focused on eliminating this small force that had caused more damage than the entire council fleet combined. Jiwon received the intelligence from Mina, who had intercepted Vrex communications. "They're coming for us," Mina said, her voice tight with tension. "This isn't a patrol. This is an extermination force. The bridge crew looked to Jiwon, waiting for orders. Some looked afraid. Others looked eager. All of them looked ready to follow her into whatever came next. Jiwon studied the tactical display, seeing the massive Vrex fleet bearing down on their position. By every conventional measure, they were hopelessly outnumbered. The smart move would be to retreat, to escape and hope the Council could eventually mount a defense. But Jiwon hadn't come out here to be smart. She had come to send a message. "We're not running," she said. "Lieutenant Bora, I need your best pilots for a special mission. Captain Deho, plot a course into the Viridian Nebula. We're going to show the Vrex what happens when they corner humans. We're going to show them that even winning against us costs more than they're willing to pay." She opened a secure channel to Ambassador Hyun. "Tell the Council to watch their sensors. We're about to teach the Vrex something about Earth. When predators become prey, they learn fear." The Viridian Nebula was a massive cloud of gas and debris left behind by a supernova thousands of years ago. It was unstable, filled with pockets of volatile compounds and unpredictable energy fluctuations. No sane pilot would take a fleet into such a dangerous environment. The Council had marked it as a navigation hazard to be avoided at all costs. That made it perfect for Commander Jiwon Kim's purposes. The human fleet entered the nebula with the Vrex war fleet close behind. 30 massive Virex capital ships pursued 20 smaller human vessels into a place where sensors barely worked and navigation was guesswork. The Vrex didn't hesitate. They had numbers. They had firepower. They believed victory was inevitable. "All ships break formation," Jiwon ordered. "Execute dispersal pattern Gamma. Make them chase us through this soup." The human ships scattered like startled fish, each heading in different directions through the dense nebula. The Vrex swarm, thinking as one mind, divided its forces to pursue. That was their first mistake. Captain Daeho Yoon piloted the Indomitable through a narrow canyon of compressed gas, his sensors practically useless. He was flying by instinct and experience gained from navigating the asteroid belts of the solar system. Behind him, 3 Vrex capital ships followed, their massive forms struggling to maneuver in the tight space. "Weapons, prepare plasma charges," Daeho ordered. "Set them for proximity detonation." His weapons officer, a woman named Eunji, who had served with him since the Mars conflicts, worked quickly. "Charges armed." "But sir, in this environment, the reaction could be unpredictable." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Daeho said with a grim smile. The Indomitable released a series of plasma charges behind it, each one calibrated to interact with the unstable compounds in the nebula. When the Vrex ships reached the charges, Daeho triggered them remotely. The explosion set off a chain reaction through the gas cloud, creating a wave of energy that engulfed the pursuing vessels. 2 Vrex capital ships were destroyed immediately. The third was crippled, tumbling through space with its systems failing. Daeho didn't stop to confirm the kills. He was already navigating toward the rendezvous point Jiwon had designated. All across the nebula, similar ambushes were taking place. Lieutenant Borahan led her fighter squadrons in lightning strikes against isolated Vrex ships. The fighters would appear from the gas clouds, strike hard, and vanish before the Vrex could coordinate a response. The nebula's interference meant the hive mind couldn't communicate effectively. Each Vrex ship was suddenly alone, cut off from the collective intelligence that made them so dangerous. "They're panicking," Dr. Mina Choi reported from the Sentinel. "I'm picking up confused signals from the Virex formations. They've never operated independently before. They don't know how to fight without the hive mind coordinating everything." Jiwon watched the tactical display as the Vrex fleet slowly disintegrated. Ships collided with each other in the dense gas. Some fired on their own vessels, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the chaos. The humans were taking casualties too. 2 destroyers had been lost, and the horizon was badly damaged. But the Vrex had lost 17 capital ships in less than an hour. "This is it," Jiwon said quietly. "Signal all ships. Final phase. Converge on the Vrex command ship." The human fleet emerged from different points in the nebula, surrounding the largest Vrex vessel. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Sentinel, pulsing with dark energy. This was the command nexus, the ship that coordinated the entire Vrex presence in this sector. "All weapons fire," Jiwon ordered. 20 human ships unleashed everything they had. Missiles, plasma torpedoes, railgun rounds, experimental weapons that Earth had been developing in secret. The Vrex command ship's shields held for 30 seconds. Then they collapsed, and the hull began to tear apart. Before it could be destroyed completely, Corporal Sun Ho Kang and his marine teams were already launching toward it in boarding pods. They breached the dying vessel in multiple locations, fighting through corridors filled with Vrex drones. The combat was brutal and close, the kind of fighting that humans had refined over centuries of ground warfare. Sun Ho led his team to what appeared to be the ship's central intelligence chamber. It was a vast space filled with organic technology, pulsing with bioluminescent light. At the center was something that looked like a brain made of crystal and metal, suspended in energy fields. This was a Vrex submind, a fragment of their collective intelligence. Plant the charges, Sun Ho ordered. But first I want a full data dump from that thing. His technical specialist, a Marine named Jun, who had been a computer engineer before joining the military, worked quickly to interface with the alien system. It's resisting, but I think I can force a connection. This thing processes information differently than anything I've seen. You have 2 minutes, Sun Ho said, watching as Vrex drones began to converge on their position. His team set up defensive positions, their weapons cutting down the approaching enemies. The drones moved with mechanical precision, but they were slow to adapt to human tactics. They expected predictable responses and got chaos instead. Got it, Jun shouted. Full download. You're not going to believe what's in here. Tell me later, Sun Ho said.
Everyone out now!
The Marines evacuated as the charges detonated, destroying the Vrex command ship from the inside. The explosion lit up the nebula like a small sun. When the light faded, the remaining Vrex ships began to retreat. Without their command nexus, they were lost, confused, unable to coordinate. The human fleet didn't pursue. They had won, but the cost had been high. G1 ordered all ships to report their status. The casualty lists came in slowly. 43 people dead, over 100 wounded, 2 ships destroyed completely, others so damaged they could barely maintain life support. G1 sat in her command chair, feeling the weight of every name on that list. These were people who had trusted her, who had followed her into a trap that had worked but had nearly killed them all. She wondered if this was what General Sora Lim had felt during the Unification Wars, if this burden ever got easier to carry. Commander, Mina's voice broke through her thoughts. You need to see what we recovered from the Vrex ship. It's important. Ji-won made her way to the intelligence suite. Mina had been working non-stop since the battle ended, analyzing the data that Sun Ho's team had retrieved. She looked exhausted but excited, the way she always did when she discovered something significant. The Vrex aren't just conquering, Mina said without preamble. They're fleeing. There's something behind them, something worse. They're trying to build an empire large enough to defend against it. Ji-won felt her blood run cold. What kind of threat? I don't know. The data is fragmented. But the Vrex are terrified of it. That's why they're so aggressive, why they don't negotiate. They're running from something and they're desperate. Does the Council know about this? I doubt it. The Vrex don't communicate, remember? They just take and move forward. But now we know why. Ji-won thought about the implications. If the Vrex were running from something worse, then the galaxy had a much bigger problem than anyone realized. But she also saw an opportunity. Fear made people irrational. If the Vrex were afraid, they could be negotiated with. Not with diplomacy and appeals to reason, but with the language of force that they understood. Can we communicate with them? Ji-won asked. I think so. The data we captured includes communication protocols. We could reach out to their collective intelligence directly. Then that's what we're going to do. Set up a channel. Within hours, Mina had established a connection to the Vrex hive mind. It wasn't easy. The Vrex consciousness was alien in ways that defied understanding. But humans had been talking to things that didn't think like them for their entire history. Animals, machines, each other across cultural divides. This was just another step. Commander Ji-won Kim stood before the holographic interface, knowing that somewhere in the darkness of space, the Vrex collective intelligence was watching and listening. She had one chance to make this work. I am Commander Ji-won Kim of Earth, she said clearly. You've been fighting the species of this galaxy. You've won many battles, but you've never fought humans before. We just destroyed your command ship and 17 of your capital vessels. We did it with 20 ships against your 30. Do you understand what that means? There was silence. Then a voice, if it could be called that, responded. It sounded like 1,000 whispers speaking in perfect unison. You fight without honor, without structure, without predictability. We fight to survive, Jiwan corrected. Just like you. We know what you're running from. We don't know the details yet, but we know you're afraid. Here's what you need to understand. If you keep attacking Council space, we will hunt you. We will use every tactic, every weapon, every bit of creativity that makes us human. We will make it cost you more to stay than it costs to leave. You are small, few in number. Yes, Jiwan agreed. But we're also creative, unpredictable, and very, very good at making life difficult for our enemies. You can try to destroy us, but it will take resources, time, energy. Things you don't have if you're running from something worse. Or you can withdraw from Council space and we can discuss the real threat facing all of us. The silence stretched longer this time. Jiwan waited, barely breathing. Everything depended on whether the Vreks could overcome their nature enough to make a rational choice, based on fear rather than aggression. Finally, the whispers returned. We will consider, but if this is deception, then you'll know humans are even more dangerous than you thought, Jiwan finished. Take your time, but understand that every day you stay here, we're learning more about how to hurt you. The connection ended. Jiwan sagged slightly, the tension leaving her body. Mina looked at her with something like awe. That was either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both, Jiwan admitted. Now we need to contact Ambassador Hyun. The Council needs to know what we've learned. They also need to know that humanity just did in 3 weeks what they couldn't do in months. They're going to be furious, Mina said. Let them be furious, Jiwan replied. Fear and anger are useful emotions. Maybe they'll finally start taking things seriously. The council chambers were in chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted over each other, their translation devices creating a cacophony of anger, fear, and confusion. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Hyun Park, calm and unmoved despite the storm of accusations being hurled at him. Your species violated direct council orders, the High Speaker of the Talvek declared, their crystalline form glowing red with fury. You engaged in unauthorized military action. You conducted warfare using tactics we specifically banned centuries ago as too barbaric for civilized species. And yet we're still here, Hyun replied quietly. While 3 of your worlds are ash, Earth's fleet is intact. While your forces suffered 60% casualties, we lost 2 ships out of 20. You can call us barbaric if you want. History will call us survivors. The chamber erupted again. Some representatives demanded Earth's immediate expulsion. Others, particularly a Talvek military commander named Kelvin, who had witnessed the destruction of his homeworld's defense fleet, spoke in humanity's defense. They did what we could not, Kelvin said, his voice cutting through the noise. They achieved in 3 weeks what we failed to accomplish in months. Perhaps instead of condemning them, we should be asking why our enlightened methods failed so completely. Because they abandoned honor, another representative shouted. They used deception, ambush, psychological warfare. These are tactics we evolved beyond. You evolved beyond them, Hyun corrected. We never had that luxury. Earth spent thousands of years fighting for survival on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. Ice ages, plagues, predators, each other. We learned to adapt or die. That's not barbarism. That's evolution of a different kind. Before the debate could continue, the chamber doors opened. Commander Jiwon Kim entered, still wearing her battle-worn uniform, flanked by Captain Dae Ho-yoon and Dr. Mina Choi. The assembled representatives fell silent, staring at this human commander who had accomplished the impossible. Jiwon walked to the center of the chamber with military precision. She looked tired, carrying the weight of the people she had lost, but her eyes were steady. She had come here not to apologize but to deliver a message. I am Commander Jiwon Kim, she said, her voice carrying across the vast space. I led the Earth fleet that engaged the Vreks. I'm responsible for every action we took, every tactic we used. If you want to condemn someone, condemn me. But before you do, you should know what we learned. She activated a holographic display showing the data that had been recovered from the Vreks command ship. The Vreks aren't just conquering. They're running. There's something behind them, something that terrified them enough to launch this desperate expansion. They're trying to build an empire large enough to defend against a threat that we don't fully understand yet. The chamber was silent now. Every representative leaned forward, studying the data. How long do we have? The High Speaker asked, their anger replaced by something that looked like fear. Based on the Vreks flight pattern and the data we captured, we estimate 5 years before this new threat reaches Council space. Maybe less. 5 years. the Sorfine representative whispered, their form rippling in their water tank. We spent months fighting the Vrex and barely survived. How do we face something that made them afraid? That's the question, Jiwon said. And here's the answer you're not going to like. You need to learn to fight the way Earth fights, not with honor codes and formal battle tactics. With everything you have, every advantage, every trick, every bit of creativity and ruthlessness that survival requires. You're asking us to become like you, the High Speaker said, to abandon centuries of cultural evolution. I'm asking you to survive, Jiwon replied bluntly. Your cultural evolution is beautiful. Your peace and harmony are things Earth still struggles with, but none of that matters if you're extinct. The universe doesn't care about your values. It cares about who adapts and who doesn't. President Elena Volkov's hologram appeared in the chamber, her image projected from Earth. She had listened to everything, and now she was ready to make her offer. The council asked what Earth is capable of, Volkov said, her voice calm but firm. Now you know. We're capable of winning when losing means extinction. We're capable of making hard choices that keep people alive. We're capable of adapting to any threat because that's what we've always done. But here's what should really matter to you. We're also capable of teaching others, of sharing what we've learned, of standing with our allies when things get dark. She paused, letting that sink in. Earth offers the council a deal. We will share our military tactics, our training methods, our understanding of asymmetric warfare. We will help you prepare for the real threat that's coming. But in return, you need to accept some uncomfortable truths. The age of civilized, predictable warfare is over. The enemy you're about to face won't follow your rules. They won't respect your boundaries. And if you try to fight them the way you fought the Vrex, you'll lose. What are you asking for in return? The High Speaker asked. Nothing you haven't already given other species, Volkov replied. A permanent seat on the military directorate, the authority to train council forces in human combat doctrine, and most importantly, your trust that when we tell you something needs to be done, you listen. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species were violently opposed to giving humans more power. Others, particularly those whose worlds had been attacked by the Vrex, argued that Earth had earned the right to lead the defense efforts. Dr. Mina Choi provided analysis after analysis, showing how human tactics could be integrated with council technology to create a defense that might actually work against the coming threat. General Sora Lim joined the discussion via hologram, presenting detailed training programs that could prepare council forces for the kind of warfare they had never experienced. She was careful to emphasize that this wasn't about making other species exactly like humans. It was about teaching them to think differently, to see warfare not as a structured game, but as a survival challenge where creativity and adaptation mattered more than raw power. Finally, after extensive deliberation, the council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Several species abstained and a few voted against. But the majority approved Earth's proposal. Humanity would join the military directorate, the first species under a century of membership to achieve such a position. Commander Jiwon Kim was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Combined Defense Initiative. Captain Daeho Yoon became her second in command. Lieutenant Bora Han was tasked with training council pilots in advanced fighter tactics. Corporal Sun Ho Kang would establish and lead the first multi-species special operations unit. The changes happened quickly. Within weeks, human military advisors were stationed on dozens of council worlds. Training facilities were established. Council officers who had spent their careers learning traditional warfare now sat in classrooms where humans taught them about ambushes, psychological operations, and unconventional tactics. Not everyone adapted well. Some council officers found the human approach disturbing. They struggled with the idea of fighting without clearly defined rules. They questioned the morality of tactics designed to maximize enemy fear and confusion. But others, particularly those who had faced the Vrex directly, understood. They learned quickly, combining their advanced technology with human strategic thinking. 6 months after the Viridian Nebula battle, Admiral Jiwon Kim stood on the bridge of a new flagship. The Defiant was a joint construction, built with council technology and human design philosophy. Its crew was diverse, representing 20 different species, all trained in what was being called the Earth Doctrine. Beside her stood Captain Daeho, reviewing tactical displays. Dr. Mina Choi worked in the science section, analyzing the latest intelligence about the approaching threat. They still didn't know exactly what was coming, But they were learning more every day, and more importantly, they were preparing. "Feels strange," Deho said quietly. "A year ago, we were outcast conducting an illegal military operation. Now we're leading the galaxy's defense." "We didn't change," Jiwan replied. "They did. They learned that survival matters more than pride." "Do you think we can actually win against whatever's coming?" Jiwan looked at the tactical display showing the combined council forces. Ships from dozens of species, all trained in tactics that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Fighter squadrons running drills that emphasized creativity over formation. Marines practicing boarding actions that relied on speed and surprise. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what they had before. "I think we have a chance," Jiwan said. "A year ago they didn't even have that." Ambassador Hyun visited the Defiant during its shakedown cruise. He found Jiwan in the observation deck looking at the stars. The same place she had stood months ago, questioning whether the cost of victory was too high. "You did it," Hyun said. "You showed them what Earth is capable of." "Did I?" Jiwan asked. "I showed them we can fight. I showed them we can win battles. But I'm not sure they understand what we're really capable of." "Then tell me, what is Earth truly capable of?" Jiwan was quiet for a long moment. "We're capable of becoming whatever we need to be. When we needed to be explorers, we explored. When we needed to be scientists, we discovered. When we needed to be warriors, we fought. And when we needed to be teachers, we taught. That's what makes us human, not our violence or our technology, our ability to adapt to change, to look at an impossible situation and find a way through it." "And when this is over?" Hyun asked. "When we've defeated whatever's coming, what will we need to become then?" "I don't know," Jiwan admitted. "Maybe something better. Maybe something that can help the galaxy build a real peace, not just the absence of war. But that's a problem for later. Right now, we need to survive." She turned to face him. "The Council finally learned what Earth is capable of. They learned we can fight. They learned we can win. But there's something more important they haven't learned yet." "What's that?" "That we don't want to be warriors forever. We're good at it because we had to be. But every human who fought in this campaign, every soldier who risked their life, they all did it hoping their children wouldn't have to. That's what we're really capable of. Fighting not because we love war, but because we love peace enough to defend it." Dr. Mina Choi joined them, carrying a data pad. "The latest projections are in. With the current training pace and fleet expansion, we'll have a defensive network ready in 3 years. It won't be perfect, but it will be enough to give us a fighting chance." 3 years, Jiwan repeated. 3 years to prepare for something we don't fully understand. "We've done more with less," Deho said, entering the observation deck. "The human fleet had 20 ships and a prayer. Now we have the entire council working together. If this new threat thinks we're going to just roll over, they're in for a surprise." Jiwan looked at her team, at the bridge crew visible through the transparent walls, at the stars beyond. She thought about General Sora Lim's words before this all started. Show them what humanity learned from all those years of war. They had shown the council how to fight. Now they would show them how to survive. And maybe, if they were very lucky and very smart, they would show them how to do something humanity had always struggled with. How to win without losing themselves in the process. "All hands," Jiwan announced over the ship-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Kim. We have our orders. We're heading to the outer rim to establish the first defensive station. This is where we make our stand. This is where we prove that the Council made the right choice. And this is where we show whatever's coming that this galaxy isn't going to fall without a fight. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being the most stubborn. So let's be stubborn together." The Defiance engines powered up and the ship jumped to faster than light travel. Behind it, a fleet of Council vessels followed, all heading toward the edge of known space. They were no longer just separate civilizations. They were something new, something that combined ancient wisdom with fresh perspectives, technology with tactics, honor with pragmatism. They were a galaxy that had finally learned what Earth was capable of, and they were about to show the universe what they could accomplish when they worked together. The stars stretched and blurred as the fleet vanished into the void, heading toward an uncertain future with determination born from humanity's oldest lesson. When faced with extinction, you don't give up. You adapt. You fight. You survive. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you even win.